It is 2023, and we humans here on Earth are in the midst of a climate crisis. Earlier this year, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change confirmed that human activities, principally through emissions of greenhouse gases, have unequivocally caused global warming, and limiting that warming to 2 degrees Celsius will involve rapid, deep, and in most cases, immediate greenhouse gas emission reductions. Using numbers from 2019, the IPCC also found that direct greenhouse gas emissions from the transport sector accounted for 23% of global energy-related CO2 emissions, and 70% of those emissions came from road vehicles, 12% from aviation, and 1% from rail. It is clear that reducing greenhouse gas emissions from the transportation system is critical to maintaining a more habitable planet. So how do we do it? First, before getting into emission reduction techniques, I should say that I live in North America, so this video will largely focus on improvements framed around that part of the world. Second, these techniques are from a planning perspective, since that is what I'm studying at university. All right, let's get into it. The most common solution presented is vehicle electrification. Everyone just needs to replace their car with an electric vehicle, so go buy a Tesla. This solution certainly is the one of least resistance, since it requires little societal change, but it fails to address all the other environmental problems associated with dependency on single-occupancy vehicles. First, they take up way too much space, both during transport and storage. Just look at these sample of transit rider numbers taken during peak travel times in my area. Imagine how much more traffic congestion there would be if these riders decided to take a car instead. Second, they result in a lot of other pollutants, like microplastics from tire rolling friction. And third, they require impervious surfaces to support their infrastructure, which is not good for flood prevention or reducing runoff. It's clear that EVs do not provide the deep emission reduction called for by the IPCC. They might save the car industry, but they certainly won't save our climate. So what will? Arguably, the most important technique that I'm going to talk about is zoning reform. Zoning is a legal framework that regulates local land use, form, and sometimes performance. Updating local zoning to allow for mixed-use, higher-density development near community cores should be a priority everywhere. This means reducing the distance people have to go from their home to reach work, school, entertainment, and commerce, making transportation alternatives more achievable for all. This was somewhat demonstrated in the 2020 shutdowns during the pandemic, which caused considerable decline in greenhouse gas emissions all over the world, as less people were traveling for work. For example, people could view the Himalayan mountain range from more than 100 miles away for the first time in nearly 3 decades. Incredible. Less distance traveled, less air pollution, less greenhouse gas emissions. This decline was obviously temporary, and the urge of getting back to a normal and stable economy resulted in a surge of emissions after shutdowns ended, as was the case in many countries. But to move toward and beyond the level of emission reduction seen during lockdowns, we need less land use that looks like this, or this, and more development patterns that look like this, and this, and this. Zoning has the power to allow home occupations and other means of working from home. Ensuring that these uses are available is important in reducing the amount of distance traveled when updating local codes. These changes also improve the quality of life for communities. Allowing working from home reduces childcare costs for working families, relieving a source of stress. And who doesn't want a shorter morning commute and to be closer to the places they want to go? There are also positive health benefits because more people will choose to walk or bike, which is good for physical and mental well-being. In addition to increasing the transportation efficiency of our built environment with zoning, we need to end the inequitable subsidies that casual car owners and users benefit from. Obviously, there are certain situations where a car is the best vehicle of choice for transport. Maybe you are delivering cargo or moving into a new apartment. Maybe you are going somewhere remote, or you have a disability and require a car to get around. These are not the cases I am referring to. Instead, I'm talking about the commuter who chooses to drive a car simply because it is the fastest, safest, cheapest, and most convenient way to get where they are going. Eliminating public subsidies that support this choice would benefit emission reductions greatly. First, there should never be free parking in a public space. Parking spaces cost a lot of money to maintain, and the land they are on is valuable. If a car owner wants to temporarily occupy that space with their personal property, they should pay a market rent for that privilege. Otherwise, with free parking, residents that do not own a car are paying for infrastructure they will never use. Second, municipalities should charge higher excise taxes for less fuel-efficient vehicles. This would increase the cost of operating this type of vehicle and cause some to choose to switch to a more fuel-efficient one. This would have positive health impacts as it would improve community air quality. It could also lower road maintenance costs, since often it is large vehicles like SUVs that are the least efficient. Heavier vehicles cause more road wear and tear. Third, and more on the state and federal level, there should be stricter fuel standards for SUVs and other light trucks. These vehicles were originally exempt from the normal fuel standards of passenger cars because people only bought them for work purposes. Nowadays, these vehicles are bought and marketed to the average office worker. This class of vehicle should not get these special privileges that affect all of us breathing in their exhaust. Lastly, the federal gas tax has not been raised in 30 years. Maybe we should get on that. Maybe less people would drive if gas was more expensive. All right, moving on. So in addition to making car trips less appealing, another technique to reduce transportation greenhouse gas emissions is to make sustainable transportation options more appealing. According to a Federal Highway Administration survey, 45% of daily trips are taken for shopping and errands, 27% for social and recreational purposes, and 15% for commuting. On top of that, the Bureau of Statistics found that in 2021, 52% of all trips, including all modes of transportation, were less than 3 miles long, and 28% of trips less than 1 mile. So with 87% of daily trips taken in personal vehicles, why is it that people are choosing to drive that short distance instead of walk, bike, or take transit? Again, it returns to the question of the fastest, safest, cheapest, and most convenient way to get from one place to another. How do we make sure the answer to that question is a sustainable transportation option? For me, I'll happily walk somewhere that is within 15 minutes, and when the weather is nice, I'll even go within 30 minutes. It's a free, healthy, and convenient way to get where I need to go. I, however, have the privilege of living in a pedestrian-friendly area, and these numbers would change if I had to walk in an area like this. Not only are these harsher environments less interesting to walk around in, but they are more dangerous. It is not a comfortable surrounding, and when I have to walk in an area like this, I'm on edge constantly. This is especially true in areas that lack sidewalks and adequate lighting. And even when there are sidewalks, the crossings between them are not always safe. Notice here when I cross this 4-lane road, this car does not yield for me, even though I walked at a steady pace to try and assert my pedestrian right-of-way. Road design that is unsafe for pedestrians is a major issue. So, to encourage walking requires safe sidewalks and crossings with adequate protection from cars. I personally will not bike on a road with speeds higher than 30 miles per hour. I imagine this is true for many people, which means that to encourage more biking, there need to be bike paths separated from vehicle traffic. My favorite versions of these are shared use paths like this one. I think another barrier to more biking is lack of secure bike racks that are protected from the elements. Many times I get somewhere and cannot find a bike rack, so I lock my bike to a street sign pole. I don't recommend this. I also think more people would bike if they knew basic bike maintenance and road navigation tips. Holding community events to teach these skills could greatly encourage more biking and change the public's perception of biking as a legitimate mode of transportation instead of just a recreational pastime. To improve the speed of transit, there needs to be more adoption of dedicated transit lanes. So long as buses get stuck in the same traffic as cars do, people are going to choose the car. Also, providing express options to the most highly traveled areas is needed, like from one downtown to a neighboring downtown. For safety, I think awareness campaigns would be a good approach to alter public perception of transit. The American Public Transit Association found that public transit is 10 times safer per mile than traveling by car. To make it even safer for riders, bus stops should be required to have basic accessibility and amenities like lighting, shelter, level boarding, benches, etc. Public transit is already low cost, but to incentivize it more, many cities have made it free, a great option that benefits low-income residents. To improve transit convenience and induce demand for it, there should be increased frequency and better timed transfers. If a rider has to check a schedule, that's already a strong enough deterrent to discourage people. Basically, for all these sustainable transportation options, the people who use them should not be second-class citizens, and infrastructure needs to be provided to guarantee dignity for walkers, bikers, and transit riders. People should feel empowered when they choose these alternative forms of transportation. So to conclude, to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from transportation systems, we must address insufficient zoning and land use patterns, end subsidies for car owners and users, and induce demand for sustainable transportation options. Not only will this be healthier for our climate, but it will improve the quality of life for communities that implement them, providing physical and mental health benefits. It is more crucial than ever that we implement these strategies to deeply reduce greenhouse gas emissions from our transportation systems. Thank you for watching, and please plan sustainably.